revelation.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. It is Monday, March 16th, 2026. Well, the CIA is spying again on Tucker Carlson, and it looks like the truth about the war in Iran is coming to a head when we're talking about China. China had stopped flying sorties towards a military aircraft towards the island of Taiwan, and then recently stepped them up again. There was also a strange development where fishing boats were amassing around Taiwan as well. So there's strange developments there. We're not really sure what that means, but we're going to talk about this and more. 32 headlines to get through today for this Monday. Hope everybody had a great weekend. But let's not waste any more time and read the news. All right, we're going to start with Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson claims DOJ will charge him for violating foreign agent law. The CIA read my text on Iran war. And the New York Post has the story. Tucker Carlson claims CIA read his text with Iran, is framing him as a foreign agent. Well, the story goes on to say that Tucker Carlson has claimed that the CIA read his text messages leading up to the war with Iran in an effort to frame him as a foreign agent. The conservative pundit 56 said the Department of Justice is preparing to charge him as an unregistered foreign agent for the Iranian regime on the CIA's recommendation during a video posted on X on Saturday night. The CIA is preparing some kind of criminal referral against me, a crime report to the Department of Justice on the basis of a supposed crime I committed, he said on one of his videos there on X, YouTube, etc. Why people are bash Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is just a media pundit as of late. He's not, I refer to him as a journalist. Is he really a journalist? I guess he's more or less a podcaster now. That doesn't detract anything from Tucker Carlson. Certainly, my issue here is that if the CIA doesn't like Tucker Carlson, that makes me like Tucker Carlson even more. Is Tucker Carlson really a threat to the United States? Yeah, I don't know about that. He also added that what's that crime? Well, talking to people in Iran before the war. I mean, he has media contacts in Iran, and he wants he wants to follow those those contacts with Iran before the war, after the war, during the war. It doesn't really matter to me. He's contacting people in Iran. That's not necessarily a crime. So we got other stories to get through too as well. Some Oscar news, if you really want to call it news, not surprising to me at all. But what we're going to do is we're going to cover what's going on in Iran first. Just the news, the Iranian regime is arresting people accused of sharing information with Israel. The authorities in Iran have arrested dozens of people accused of sharing sensitive information with Israel. Local media reported Sunday an Israeli and U.S. fighter jets continued conducting airstrikes on targets inside the country. In northwestern Iran, the Tasnim news agency reported that prosecutors ordered the arrest of 20 individuals accused of sending location details about Iranian military and security facilities. The Iranian people want to be free of this totalitarian regime. I certainly don't blame them. If they're giving information to Israel, why would Iran be surprised? I mean, they're not surprised. I mean, it's any totalitarian regime wants to keep control of their people. Um, that's just the nature of what we're talking about here. There's more reports that Iran's attacks are not letting up. New York Post: Iranian drone strike takes out fuel tank at Dubai airport, temporarily halting flights. Fuel tank at Dubai International Airport in the United Arab Emirates was struck by an Iranian drone attack on Monday morning, only temporarily halting flights. Dramatic video showed a thick black smoke that's associated with oil depots with an enormous fire. But the fire Dubai firefighters put out the fire, and the airport, which was closed temporarily and suspended flights just briefly, has reopened to business. The attack is the third to hit Dubai's airport since the start of the most recent conflict in the Middle East on February 28th, as Iran continues to strike civilian infrastructure in its Gulf neighbors in Israel. A separate Iranian drone attack on Monday hit the government media office in Al-Quwain, roughly 30 miles north of Dubai, triggering a fire. So Iran isn't letting up. This idea that they were going to knuckle under, many people have said, and I've watched and seen many comments and threads regarding, oh, Iran is not losing, Iran is winning, and all these different things. War is war, and the view of what's happening is often distorted by propaganda, news reports, and what have you. But there's one thing to be sure, that the United States military hasn't met its match in Iran. Iran's geography, its tactics, certainly give it some advantages. This isn't going to be something that's easily won by the United States. It is not going to be won by Iran, as some people are talking about online. It's just, it is what it is. I'm not for the war. Let's put this right. I'm not for this action that I think, I don't know how Trump went sideways on this. I understand, sort of. As far as political promises is what I'm talking about. How did Trump go so sideways on a political promise about not starting new foreign wars, what have you? But my understanding is becoming more and more clear that this isn't really about Iran as much as it's about China. And specifically, this was a window that couldn't have been missed. Next article up here: Mohammed bin Salman urges Trump to keep hitting Iran hard. This follows the same advice of the late Saudi King Abdullah, who had reportedly told Washington repeatedly to cut off the head of the snake. Okay, so the Saudi Arabians are Sunni Muslim, which is different than Shia Muslim, and those two factions, those two sects of Islam, are always at odds and continually fighting. The point being here is that, talked about the Strait of Hormuz for a second. The problem with Iran is its militancy and its ability to cause havoc in this part of the world, specifically closing or threatening to close or mining or jeopardizing shipping in or through the Strait of Hormuz that it seeks to control, strictly as a warfighting or political tool. This can't go on, because it's not fair. Iran isn't the only one who uses the Persian Gulf. It's used by many of its Arab neighbors, and to choke it off after being attacked, sure, is a strategy, is a tactic, but is it the right thing to do? No, but that's the only strength It has, and that's why it's deploying that. Getting back to this Jerusalem Post story, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, has been advising U.S. President Donald Trump to keep hitting the Iranians hard, according to the New York Times. The continuation of Iran's unjust attacks on the Gulf Cooperation Council, that's the Arab nations, and Iran, represents a desperate and dangerous escalation that threatens the region's security and stability. Yeah, okay. Of course it does. This is just, Iran is not winning. Can Iran last? Sure, Iran could last. And no clear victory for the United States. Is that a defeat of the United States? I don't know. How to prosecute this war further? Who knows? I would say there has to be a certain halt of hostilities on the part of the United States. I don't know if that's going to help. Iran said they're coming to the table. Then publicly they said there's not going to be any ceasefire. But we're going to get to what is really happening here. But there is some communications from the Iranian government that they want to talk a deal. And Trump said no deal. And now they're saying no deal. They're losing, and the regime is losing its grip. Will they be forced out through strictly through aerial bombardment? No. Is Trump going to put the Marines on Karg Island? I think that would be a mistake. It's anti-ship. There are only two words that matter in this conflict, and it's not ballistic missiles. It's not even enriched uranium. It's anti-ship missiles. That's what this is all about. And whether the Iranians will receive more powerful anti-ship missiles or they won't, but that's why the U.S. Navy is not in the Persian Gulf, because anti-ship missiles. They talk about projectiles because they don't want to say the word anti-ship missiles. And nobody wants to talk about anti-ship missiles because it's going to draw the Chinese communists into the war. If we even mention that, that's the reason people aren't talking about it. I can, because who am I, right? Mediaite is reporting Pete Hegseth calls for no quarter for U.S. enemies in apparent violation of international law. It's true, this is in violation of international law. Hegseth said, who's in charge? Iran might not even know. With every passing hour, we know, and we know they know, that the military capabilities of their evil regime are crumbling. They can barely communicate, let alone coordinate. They're confused, and we know it. Our response will keep pressing, we'll keep pushing, keep advancing. No quarter, no mercy for our enemies. Does Pete Hegseth know what no quarter means? It means no prisoners, essentially. No quarter. I don't want to go into the definition of no quarter, but it's been part of U.S. military treaties for a long time, saying because it revolves around not killing prisoners. But of course, Mediaite gets on their high horse and they're saying, how can you say no quarter? It's outside of U.S. military doctrine for the most part for them to say that, but it might very well have been given to Pete Hegseth by the PSYOPs department, right? So he says no quarter, that's a PSYOP thing. It's a psychological operation. Does that mean the United States is going to start executing prisoners or civilians or whomever? No, that's not what's going to happen. So let's not get all on our high horse about him saying no quarter. But when I saw that press conference where he said that, I was like, oh, that's not going to receive very well. And now we have Trump out there saying, oh, we need NATO to help in the Persian Gulf. We spurned NATO, we spurned our European allies, and then we go in and start a war with Israel on our own, and now we want them to help us? You go it alone, you go it alone, right? We'll see what happens. Related to this, this is also, it's getting, the whole atmosphere, the media atmosphere is getting very dark. And I mean dark in terms of clandestine intelligence dark. Like not dark, no communication, but we're having the thing with the no quarter was disturbing. And now we have the FBI saying things like this. The Post Millennial is reporting Michigan synagogue attacker died of self-inflicted gunshot wound. His engine compartment catches fire, and at some point during the gunfight, Gazil suffers a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Now, did you see you could look at this redheaded stepchild here for the FBI. She looks pretty nasty, but I don't believe this in an instant because the original reports were the security forces shot at him. Now, let's look at the story, though. The gunman had crashed his vehicle into a Michigan synagogue, died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound after being confronted by armed security officers. Okay, 41-year-old Ahmad Mohammed Ghazili, a Lebanese-born American citizen, naturalized American citizen, rammed his Ford truck with explosives into the doors of Temple Israel in West Bloomfield about 12:20 on Thursday. He then exited the vehicle with a rifle. All right, you follow me here? He exited the vehicle with a rifle and exchanged gunfire with security personnel. Initial reports claim that the security shot and killed him, but federal investigators have now confirmed that Ghazili shot himself during the confrontation. Give me a fucking break. Now, you see this was where this is going because you hear this a lot. And it seems to be an FBI thing. People that commit violent crime with weapons shoot themselves. Always. It doesn't matter if reports say different. They always end up shooting themselves. Law enforcement or people with guns do not shoot them. They kill themselves. Why is that? I don't believe this in an instant. He gets out of his truck that's on fire, and we don't know if he begins firing, but it says that he gets into a gun battle, exchanged gunfire with security personnel. But the security personnel doesn't shot him, so he's shooting at security personnel. They're shooting back. Is he shot by security personnel and then gives himself the coup de grace because he can't fire anymore? It doesn't seem right. Seems like they killed him and the FBI just wants to put out this story. The engine compartment catches on fire. Now, this is did he light the explosives? Did not light the explosive? And at some point during the gunfight, the guy shoots himself. In the bed of the truck, we found large quantities of commercial-grade fireworks and several jugs of flammable liquid we believe to be gasoline, some of which have been consumed by the fire. You don't know whether the liquid in there was gasoline, but you know the guy shot himself. I think the priorities are mixed up there. I just don't understand. I think the guy was shot to death by security, but you don't want to admit that good guys with guns kill bad guys with guns. Why a guy would shoot himself? He wants to go see virgins. I mean, I don't, if you're going to commit damage and you still have a loaded weapon, you can still commit damage. I don't know. Was he on fire? This reporting, when I heard this report come out, it just doesn't seem right to me. Right? Why would a guy shoot himself in the head? Don't know. Next up, article number 8, Wall Street Journal, Cubans intensify protests after sundown protected by the night and blackouts. Residents in many cities banged pots, and in one town, they sacked the office of the Communist Party in an outburst of violence. I don't blame them. If there was a Communist Party, well, I shouldn't say. If there was a Communist Party office in my town. Okay, so then we're going to move on to a Zero Hedge article here. Besant, any delay in Trump-Xi summit would be due to logistics, not China's failure to help police Hormuz. If the meetings are delayed, it would not be because the president demanded that China police the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump asked other countries who benefit from oil from the Persian Gulf just to come in and help in any way possible. But they're not. So, and Chinese is going to have a delivery to Iran. Are those deliveries going to be stopped? The solid rocket booster material, and or possibly more advanced anti-ship missiles. The issue is, as I said in the beginning, it's the range of the anti-ship missiles. Now they just have range of about 500 miles or less. The new anti-ship missiles that are hypersonic have ranges of up to 2,000 miles. Wall Street Journal opinion by John Spencer, China has a lot to lose in the U.S.-Israel war on Iran. Beijing is suffering serious harm to its oil supply and its reputation as a partner and weapon supplier. What we were just talking about, it supplies weapons. The weapons really didn't work. The anti-aircraft batteries that were sold to Iran didn't work. The same ones that were sold to Venezuela didn't work. The being an ally of these countries didn't really help because China didn't really do anything. Unlike the U.S. comes to the aid of their allies if attacked, so on and so forth. But China doesn't do that. So that's the risk to its reputation. And a weapon supplier, obviously, because of the former I just stated, that their weapons don't work as advertised. And we're head and shoulders ahead of China, mostly China, in weapons development. Russia has a great degree of hypersonic, supersonic missile that it's shared subsequently with China. But the Chinese aren't as good as developing weaponry as we are, or even as the Russians are. PJ Media has the headline, China floods the skies near Taiwan and raises a dangerous question. Taiwan's defense ministry reported a major surge of Chinese military aircraft operating near the island over the weekend. Radar operators tracked dozens of aircraft moving through the surrounding airspace in a pattern that drew immediate attention across the region. The activity marked one of the larger recent waves of Chinese air operations around Taiwan. Taiwan didn't report any Chinese military planes that went beyond the median line and entered the zone for a week from February 27th. This is right after we started the attack on Iran to March 5th. After 2 were detected on March 6th, the next 4 days had none. Such flights resumed in small numbers between Wednesday and Friday. Psychological pressure may be behind a second possibility. China views Taiwan as part of its territory and has never ruled out using force to bring the island under Beijing's control. Yeah, so are they going to take this time where the United States is embroiled with a battle with Iran to try to seize Taiwan? The point is like they don't have enough fuel to do so. It's a possibility. Could we, we'd have to take carrier groups out of the Persian Gulf and send them to Taiwan. We'd see what happened. China is a paper tiger. So just like we did the same thing with the Soviet Union, we made the Soviet Union appear by our own hand, appear to be more powerful than it actually was. And we're doing the same thing with China. They're a rising military force, enemy, certainly. But you have to understand China's military, modern military history is not very successful. Speaking of success, I want to talk a little bit about the Oscars, only for one reason, and I harped on this immediately after its release. Associated Press has the headline, "One Battle After Another Triumphs at 98th Academy Awards in Coronation for Paul Thomas Anderson." Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another was crowned the Best Picture at the 98th Academy Awards, handing Hollywood's top honor to a comic, multi-generational American saga of political resistance, says the AP. It's a movie that glorifies armed revolutionary militancy in the United States. It glorifies revolutionary militancy in the United States. I want to say that one more time. A movie that glorifies political militancy in the United States. What the fuck? So they're either totally tone deaf to what's going on the streets of America, or it's another, which I believe, another purposeful propaganda film to raise the heat, the tension in this most politically divisive time in America. It's, some people have talked about the fourth turning before, and this is a true thing. It's cyclical if you look at the nature of politics, war, etc. That we're in this fourth turning, and so maybe people know that and are aware of that. The elites are always in tune to the cyclical nature of the stars and all that has to do with the astronomy, et cetera, et cetera. That has gone. That has been part of the elites' ideals, the cosmology of happenings on Earth and the human upheaval, et cetera, for millennia. And so they're not ignoring it now. So we're in this other interesting time. And what do? They keep pumping out. I finally got through watching Civil War. I'm a journalist, and I found that angle. The POV of the movie was through photojournalism, which I found, I think, interesting, at least to me personally. But the way the movie was framed was obviously propaganda, and this is just part of the same thing. So, am I going to see One Battle After Another? I saw all the other propaganda films, so maybe. But for it also to get a Grammy Award means they want more people to see it, because it really didn't receive the box office numbers they were hoping for. And what is it going to do? It is going to get people to be sympathetic towards the militant, I should say, resistance to particularly the Trump administration, but MAGA in a broader sense, Republicans, conservatives in an even broader sense, et cetera. And it's also to, I don't want to say honor, but to beautify some of the martyrs who have died for the leftist cause. So, for instance, Renee Good and that other jerk who put themselves in harm's way and then are surprised that they're dead. Because they're really Marxist revolutionaries. We don't have a repressive system in the United States. It can be, but it isn't systemically. So, because you have what is called individual freedoms and liberties that are outlined in the Constitution, so everyone gets them. So freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from religion, the right to bear arms, certainly, the freedom in your effects and your person. All these are freedoms that sometimes we worry about, because in this day of digital communications, you're surprised that you put pictures up on a cloud and somebody hacks them. Anything on the internet is not safe. So I don't consider that invasion of privacy if you have things online or on digital storage on the cloud or something, and then it gets discovered. That's different than people hacking your cameras or hacking your computer, hard drive, etc. All right, sorry. Real clear politics, the Marxist wing of the Democratic Party. Another commentary, this time from Kenan Spivak. Financed in part by Milan, and this is what I'm talking about, how this dovetails with the Academy Award for Best Picture. Financed in part by malign foreign powers who seek to defeat the United States, radical left activists and filmmakers have co-opted the Democratic Party. Representative Brad Schneider of Illinois, head of the supposedly centrist New Democratic Coalition, typifies the illogic. My concerns about the DHS is their absolute disregard for the Constitution, American citizens, and civil rights. So until we see officers who abuse citizens' civil rights held to full account, until we restore full congressional oversight, I'm not giving another penny to ICE and Customs and Border Patrol. And the commentary gets into this guy's idiocy in just a second, or illogic, as they say. You have the civil right to protest, to address grievance, right? But you don't get to interfere with law enforcement operations. Here's a deal. Here's the deal. People have guns. You don't want to fuck around with people with guns. And especially police. Why? Because they legally have the right to use their guns. Story goes on to say, but neither ICE nor CBP have been defunded as their budgets were previously appropriated. Instead, Democrats have cut funding to the Coast Guard, the TSA, Secret Service, FEMA, and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, along with Democrat departments charged with protecting Americans against terrorist threats, drug dealers, and cyber attacks. I mean, I don't understand the Democrats. I know it's like throwing a little bit of a temper tantrum, and of course, they're doing all they can for their constituents, I guess, right? To pitch a fit. If all you can do is pitch a fit, then you're going to pitch a fit, right? PJ Media, is a breakthrough on the SAVE Act coming? Just the News has the headline, U.S. Senate to hold marathon debate on GOP voter ID bill, and they're not even in line with each other. They don't have all their ducks in a row because they're still establishment Republicans, like Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican of South Dakota, plans to bring a Republican elections reform bill to the floor next week and kickstart a marathon debate that could potentially last days, and I hope it does. The idea of the strategy was to marshal enough Republicans to be ready that if the Democrats ever stopped talking, using their talking filibuster to keep a vote from happening, then they could pull in all the Republicans and they would need less. They'd need a normal majority instead of a two-thirds majority, which the filibuster was aimed to enact. The move is an attempt to appease, going back to the article here, to appease a vocal minority of Republicans who have called for Thune to revive the talking filibuster, which would require Democrats to hold the floor in order for the Senate's 60 vote threshold to remain in force. President Donald Trump endorsed the talking filibuster, but Thune has argued that there is not enough support in the Republican caucus. Why? The marathon debate is unlikely to change the minds of enough Democrats to overcome the filibuster. Or Republicans, because you still have establishment Republicans refusing to vote for this bill that 80% of the population support. Why? Voter ID. One, only a proof of citizenship to register, which I think is a no-brainer. And of course, getting rid of mail-out ballots, which is an avenue for fraud. The majority of fraud that took place in 2020 was not because of the voting machines and not because of this, that, and the other. It was because of unqualified registered voters, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where the actual ballot came from, but the ballot, as long as the ballot matched the registered voter, then it was seen as legitimate. Washington Times has the headline, "Not this week, not ever. Schumer vows to block Trump's SAVE Act." Of course he would, because he calls it Jim Crow 2.0, which it is not. It is not a poll tax. Doesn't block people. The only people it blocks from voting is illegal immigrants. And as I said it many times, whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican or you're whatever, you're an independent, every illegal ballot cast dilutes your vote. So if you're a Democrat and you believe in democracy, then voter integrity should be top of mind, because why would you care about democracy if you don't care about illegal votes that dilute your vote? One man, one vote sort of thing, right? No, because you're not really a Democrat. Because if you're a Democrat, you believe in pure democracy, the power of the ballot. But as Stalin once said, it's not who votes, but who counts the vote. And that's what happens. And it doesn't really matter, because you just have ballots outside of a chain of custody. So anything could happen in that time. And we're going to see what exactly happened in Arizona in just a minute. First, we're going to go to New York, since we were talking about communists. New York and Chuck Schumer, this is all New York City. Chuck Schumer is from New York. The communists, Mondami is New York mayor. Just the news, New York's fiscal outlook on the downside of our budget gaps. They're going to get downgraded. Two of the nation's largest credit rating agencies are sounding alarms about New York City's escalating budget crisis as Zoran Mamdani ramps up spending and pushes for tax increases to offset projected revenue shortfalls, because you're raising spending on people that can't provide for themselves, and that's an issue, because that has to be balanced. You can't give somebody who can't work or can't support themselves, you can't give those people a middle-class lifestyle, and that's what they want. They want the cable TV, they want a car, they want all the things that everyone else has, but you can't get that if you don't work. Well, I guess you could if you inherit it. I mean, that's another avenue, but then your parents would have to work. What you have in the welfare system is generational welfare. So it's one, the grandfather was on welfare and the father was on welfare and the son is on welfare and his kids are on welfare, and that's just the way you roll. And that's not good for anybody, and it's not good for the state, because really welfare should be there for people that are down on their luck, not people that just don't, they don't think they can make more money working, so they just stay on welfare. Anyway, a report issued Wednesday by Moody's, one of the nation's big three credit rating agencies, warned investors that it may soon lower New York City's AA, it's not AAA, AA credit rating, and change the city's credit status to negative from stable, while affirming its AA2 issuer rating, citing sizable and persistent projected budget gaps. The negative outlook reflects the emergence of sizable and persistent projected budget gaps and signal underlying structural imbalance. and reduce financial flexibility. And what happens is then you can't borrow when your credit rating goes down. If people might know that, I mean, we all run on credit and debt. And if people would know that, hey, you know, you need a good credit rating so you could borrow. Credit using a credit card is borrowing and so forth and so on. And that's the way the financial system works, on borrowing, on debt. Understandably so. And then they just tell the leftists, you got to listen to Keynes, and Keynes will tell you that debt doesn't matter. As long as you can afford to service your debt, it shouldn't really matter. And that's just not true. Post-millennial article number 18, Virginia sheriff refuses to honor ICE detainer for illegal alien arrested for groping 9 girls at Fairfax High School where he was a student. Illegal immigrant who came to the U.S. from El Salvador was released into the country by the Biden administration, was charged with 9 counts of assault and battery. He was enrolled at Fairfax High School, even though he was too old. As a student, was accused of groping several girls between their legs in the hallways during school throughout the year. Israel Flores Ortiz, 18, is a junior at the high school and is in the country illegally. About a dozen girls have come forward alleging that Ortiz put his hands between their legs and groped them at the school. He was arrested on March 7th and appeared in court on Friday. And then Virginia now has gone full communist with the CIA agent in charge and saying that not only, we're not turning over, we're not honoring retaining orders for illegal aliens. Why? Because we don't want to get them to vote. What's the purpose of keeping illegal aliens in the country? I don't understand. They're really nice people. Well, obviously this guy isn't. I had these a little mixed up, but let's go over to just the news. Video shows Arizona processing center ballots in manner that alarmed Congress's monitors. Video footage captured by congressional observers shows a third-party election vendor in Arizona, largest county, processing live ballots and performing signature verification in 2024, far away from the official Maricopa County Election Center, where the bipartisan monitors witnessed such activities, a discovery that prompted the observers to file a formal report alleging alarming concerns. The staffer said that the completed mail-in ballots were stored in the same room as blanks. That's against protocol. And were sorted by a third-party printing company that had no government officials or partisan observers on the site. In the memo, the staffer, a Republican, described in detail his visit to the third-party contractor, Runbeck Election Services, which was hired by Maricopa County to sort mail-in ballots for signature verification in preparation for the county's main election site. All this is fucking illegal. Right? You can't have Willie. Who knows who's working for this company? These people aren't cleared. They're not trained. They just use and I lived in Maricopa County, its largest county by population. It includes Phoenix. They're just taking mail-in ballots. There's no chain of custody. They're storing completed ballots with blanks. You're not allowed to do that. The chain of custody is so important. That's why mail-in ballots invite fraud. And I said specifically, including with my friend Perry on latest episode of Tuesdays with Perry, 138, where we said mail-out ballots invite fraud because there's no chain of custody. And you could easily insert, and that's what the Democrats did in 2020, insert already completed ballots with unknown origins, and as long as they don't exceed the number of registered voters of that district, no alarm bells will ring and no flags will be raised. Even though the whole idea for mail-in ballots was because of COVID. COVID has long been over, but Democrat states are not getting rid of mail-in ballots. It doesn't allow people that never had access to voting before to have access. It just allows people that want to cheat the system to do so. Sorry, I just mail out ballots are a big issue of mine. Moving on, Article 20, Maine Democrat Senate candidate now denies Nazi tattoo link after earlier apology. The Maine Democrat candidate who previously apologized for having a tattoo resembling a Nazi symbol, wasn't a Nazi symbol, and I'm going to go into why, is disputing that the tattoo had any connection with Nazi imagery. Graham Plattner faced criticism last year over his Nazi tattoo that resembled the Totenkopf. It didn't resemble the Totenkopf. It was the Totenkopf. However, the skull emblem that was used by Hitler, it wasn't Hitler's SS, it was Himmler's SS, but whatever. The special police, but German armed forces have used the Totenkopf, that specific imagery, and previous skull and bones, which the Totenkopf means head and bones, for years before the Nazis ever even existed. So the fact that it was used by the SS, it's certainly not the swastika. And even some people said, Jewish Democrats said, oh, I thought you had a Nazi symbol. I thought it was the swastika. It was a Totenkopf, as I said in one of my episodes. It's been long used, and even the Totenkopf that was used by the SS is not specifically Nazi imagery. But that doesn't mean I like Graham Plattner now. I don't like him. And now that it's just like being a politician, now that he sees the political winds blow in a certain direction, he goes, now I don't apologize. But he already covered up the tattoo. You know, if you're a warrior, if you're a Marine and you get a skull and bones tattoo, okay, I mean, you're a warrior. You kill people. Just like the Punisher skull. I mean, whatever. Doesn't mean he's a Nazi. Is he a Nazi? I don't know. I just don't like the political wrangling, and I don't like him necessarily, and I don't like Democrats, especially now, because Democrats today are progressive. Just the news, California seeks end run around the Supreme Court to reinstate gender secrecy policies. California is having a nice dance with the Knights, always, with the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals when the Supreme Court cut in, reinstating permanent injunction call against its so-called gender secrecy policies. And I reported on this last week in public schools that U.S. Judge Roger Benitez, after a full proceeding, now the Golden State is trying to get its favorite dance partner back, urging the Ninth Circuit to edit Benitez's order after unsuccessfully blocking it, so that California can protect gender-confused students from undefined parental abuse and withhold notice of parents' rights to be informed in their public school child expresses gender incongruence. So the Supreme Court says you can't keep information about people's children away from them. True. But it does, and that's what I talk about progressives. The Democrat Party is not strictly Democrat, which we talked about democracy just recently when in regards to the SAVE Act, which would prevent things that happened in Arizona, obviously. But nobody cares about that, right? And the progressive, first of all, if you're a Democrat, you'd want to fix democracy and they don't want to do it. Most Democrats are progressive anyway, which means let's just try new things. And even if they have harmful effects that we didn't foresee, we'll just say oopsie and move on. You know, whether it's transgender ideology or other LGBT ideology being pushed on kids, or technology being pushed on kids, or social media, cyberbullying. You know, the list is long. Where progressives thought, oh, well, won't this be a good idea? And it's not a good idea. More from the Democrats. Fox News, Schiff Booker deflect on shutdown blame amid terror concerns. Thousands of DHS workers without pay. The Democrat senators say Republicans controlling both houses and presidency voted down multiple resolutions to fund TSA, Coast Guard, and FEMA. They want to retroactively cut ICE funding, which isn't up for a vote right now. So they're cutting other DHS funding to try to force the Republicans to cut ICE funding because they were worried about a couple of ICE shootings that involved deaths of American citizens, which were mostly because these people put themselves in the line of fire. One even went as far as protesting and fighting with police officers while he had a loaded weapon. He was armed. I don't know if he was dangerous. And the other one used her car, which you can't do. And everybody who's ever tangled with the police know that you put that car in drive, when you're asked to exit the vehicle, they look at that as a threat. But these people were stupid and very likely getting paid by left-wing NGOs. All right. Post-millennial Dem mayor who led Gettysburg Pride arrested for sex crimes with a minor. Big surprise. Democrat and former mayor of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, Chad Allen Carr, 48, stepped down earlier this month after serving just 2 months in the office. Authorities have said he groomed a teenage boy with sexually explicit videos. That's progressivism. Isn't he good to students? Carr faces multiple criminal charges, including 2 felony counts tied to photographing or filming sexual acts and knowingly depicting them on his computer. He was chatting on Skype with this kid. I guess they were both masturbating or something, but the kid was underage. He was also charged with 1 misdemeanor count of corruption of a minor. The report also alleged that the victim reportedly Skyped conversations and video chats where he and Carr would engage in sexual acts, masturbation. And the Childline report also added that Carr was volunteering at the victim's high school, and that's how they met. And so they exchanged digits to communicate online, but not at the high school. And there's more with this shit. But first, PJ Media, GOP wins another redistricting battle. Jackson County Circuit Judge Adam Kane ruled that the revised map complies with the Missouri Constitution. This hands Republicans a much-needed win in the escalating national fight over mid-decade redistricting. And what is this all about? This is about after the Supreme Court ruled that you can't redistrict on the around race. And that's what the Republicans were doing to get more blacks in Republican districts. And blacks, I don't know why, because they've been convinced somehow that Republicans are racist, that blacks will vote Democrat. And the Supreme Court ruled we can't do that. And so the Republicans have figured out other ways to redistrict and include more Republicans that don't revolve around race, probably around income, which is legal. Redistricting is legal. And so the Republicans redistrict along income, and good for them because that's legal. But doing it around race isn't. Just the news, most voters support bans on transgender athletes and female sports. We know this. The Voters' Voice poll found that 68% of registered voters support allowing the Supreme Court to uphold state bans on transgender competing in women's sports. The people on the other side of the issue here, I don't understand at all. I know you want to entertain somebody's insanity, and that's really nice of you, but that doesn't have anything to do with competing in sports, right? You want to call somebody who's a man, a woman, and go ahead and be an ally in that sort of insanity, right? But they shouldn't compete in sports because it's obvious, and we've seen it prove out, is that men who have already gone through puberty are stronger, faster, et cetera, et cetera. That's why Title IX is that you have separate competition pools of females competing against females and males competing against males. Just because somebody says they're a female doesn't make it so. So you're taking a male, you're letting them compete in female pool. It's unfair. But nobody cares about being fair now. That's why you have all this race-based, and I was actually certainly not a fan, but I supported affirmative action. But now it's completely, they're all these race-based programs to supposedly give a leg up that are actually penalizing people for being white and male. Just the news again, Virginia firearms bill head to governor's desk for decision. Several firearm-related bills passed by the Virginia General Assembly this session are awaiting action from first-term Democratic governor, CIA agent Abigail Spanberger. This list includes measures addressing public carrying of certain firearms, liability standards for the firearm industry, and restrictions of unserialized firearms. And, to be honest with you here is that the three things, unserialized firearms are one thing. That has to do with 3D printing, et cetera, et cetera. But they're moving the ball forward on what was working for Democrats and gun control, which is categorizing certain things as assault firearms. Now, this just means you can't carry them around in public, whatever. But the classification of rifles in this manner is going to prove bad for gun rights advocacy people down the road, because what is assault firearm? It doesn't make any sense. We've been down this road plenty of times before. Assault firearms in public areas can't be, such as streets, roads, alleys, sidewalks, and other public rights of way. Violations would be treated as a class 1 misdemeanor. Okay. My concern is you're going to get good people caught up in these laws and end up criminalizing them. Of course, somebody that meant no harm and has a perfect record suddenly gets caught up because they have the wrong features on a gun, or they're carrying it in the wrong place. Indeed. He also criticized other firearm proposals debated during the legislature that would restrict the future sales of certain rifles. You can't keep the guns you've got. You can keep the guns you've got, but forget about your children. They'll never get to own what you have. I don't believe first of all, people that commit violent crime with guns are criminals. And so a criminal doesn't care if you have a law. So you have a law prohibiting carrying it in some way. You think if they're going to go shoot up a school, they're going to go, oh, I wanted to shoot up the school, but I can't carry my rifle in public places. Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, Federalist, some students have never read a full-length book. This bill would fix that. The NAEP, the nation's report card, shows that in 2024, 70% of 8th graders could not perform at proficient level in reading assessments. Worse, 38% could not even read and understand text at the NAEP's basic level, which denotes partial mastery of fundamental skills.
Less than 3% of you people read books.
Even the New York Times weighed in on this a few months ago, running the headline, "Kids rarely read whole books anymore, even in English class." A student from New Mexico said her class moved through books at such a slow pace that in 1 year they read only one book. Two things about reading. If you can't read, you're never going to learn. Meaning, there's shit that they never put in video, and you're never going to know it unless you read it. Also, if you don't read books, you don't understand context. Video a lot of times doesn't provide written context, which is the point. Not shown context, written context. And so you have trouble putting things in context if you don't read. The Books Act, the model legislation would require public 6th through 12th grade English classes to assign at least 2 books per semester, 4 books per year, and to read them in their entirety. You know, to be honest with you, I was not a fan of reading when I was in high school, as young persons might not know, because you only know what you know. So if you never read, you don't know what you can glean from reading. And so, of course, like most people, I started reading fiction. Now I strictly read nonfiction books. Why? Because they provide context and provide analysis that you're not going to get anywhere else. Sure, I read news, but I also read books. I don't read as many books as I would like to. But my favorite vacation is sitting on a beach with a stack of books and read them all and not be bothered. My wife, my wife has other ideas about that. So I never, even on vacation, never get to read as much as I like. But people should read books. People should read, as I said, because you learn better from reading, and it provides context and information that you're not going to get anywhere else. And if you can't read it and read it quickly and be able to absorb all that information, you're at a deficit. Also, it helps your vocabulary and it helps your speaking skill. So if you want to get a job and you don't read, you might not be able to know how to talk. I don't mean talk, but I mean speak properly. Wall Street Journal, OpenAI's bid to allow X-rated talk is freaking out its own advisors. Warning surfaced that the company's risks creating sexy suicide coach if it begins allowing sexually explicit chats, and which we saw recently happen. I think it was a guy, was it in Florida? He was in love with his chatbot, and his chatbot said, we could be together if you find me an android body to inhabit. And he couldn't find an android body for the AI chatbot to inhabit. And then she said, so the only other way we could be together is if you kill yourself. And he did. People are so fucked up. I don't understand. As people's minds seem to be vulnerable to every whim of every kind of fly-by-night scheme. Me and my wife were talking at length about, and she knows Candace Owens' family. And I liked Candace Owens, and she kept lamenting on how Candace went off the deep end. And I think it's purposeful. It's specific disinformation. Either she was told to do it, is paid to do it, or just finds popularity in doing so, because it's like flat earthers. Every cockamamie idea, conspiracy you can come up with, people find they like to glom onto, whether it's aliens or anything. And I said, I'm a big conspiracy theorist, but there has to be evidence of a conspiracy. Otherwise, there's no theory. Just making up a theory with no evidence, that's just stupid. There has to be evidence of a conspiracy. And then when the powers that be, the intelligence agencies or whatever, push back, then you know you're onto something. But if there's no evidence of a conspiracy, why would you say there's a conspiracy? I'm not saying if there's no evidence for a conspiracy that it rules out a conspiracy. I'm just saying that let's not lose our heads. A famous friend of mine would often say. Next up, post-millennial rising AI costs force Meta to slash workforce by 20%. I don't believe so. Top executives have signaled to senior managers that they will need to plan for how to scale back on labor costs. Meta responded to the report saying this is speculative reporting about theoretical approaches. First of all, it's not to make up for the money they're spending on AI. It's for the same reason everywhere, is people are slashing jobs because of AI, because AI could do the work for free. around the clock, no weekends, no Medicare, no medical care, no health care, no breaks, no lunch breaks. You hire less, you're going to hire less humans. So you're going to spend less on HR. The reason they developed AI was to get rid of human labor, which has been a thorn in the side of industrialists since the 18th century, the late 18th century, I would say. But particularly the 19th century. You take labor out of the equation, what does big business need people for? Just the news, far right, far left parties gain in French regional elections. Big surprise. The thing is if you get progressive policies, you're going to get pushback from conservatives, right wing. So the reason there was the right wing in Germany was because of the communists. The first round of voting in local elections in France is seeing a strong showing for parties on both political extremes. The reports say Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally Party emerged as the biggest winner, and it has year after year after year. And why is that? Well, mostly because of immigration. And sure, you got to have xenophobes in there. But realistically, screwed up today. Had too much fun over the weekend and wasn't paying attention. So you always have this. When there's a rise in evil, you have a rise in good, right? So if there's a rise in leftist politics, and you're going to get a rise in right-wing politics, without a doubt. And that just goes on and on and on. And the reason you're getting a rise in left-wing politics, which was usually, especially far fringe left-wing, is because that's what the elite wants. It's really behind socialism and UBI for the coming AI apocalypse, the job apocalypse. So that's why you're getting a rise. It has to be socialist. It has to be authoritarian because the modern industrialists, corporatists, want AI because they don't want to deal with human labor. They don't, the authoritarians don't like democracy. They don't like, and companies don't like to have to bargain with its employees. They just assume get rid of them, the employees. And you're seeing this in Canada. Fox News: patient in Canada waits over 12 hours in hospital emergency room. I'd rather pay. Nearly all of the waiting rooms, 150 seats, were full. The patient shares a woman seeking emergency care for severe abdominal pain. Recently shared her frustration on social media with the long wait times at Canadian hospital. Amanda Gushu, 37, first visited her primary care physician who sent her to the emergency department with a swollen appendix. After waiting for 2 hours in triage, she was sent to a waiting room where she was shocked to see that she could be there anywhere from 5 to 15 hours before she could see a nurse. And she ultimately waited 10 hours. That's rationed care. That's socialism. So I'm all for a modicum of social safety net, that people should get some free health care, but it can't all be free for everyone. So that's it. I think everybody should be able to see a doctor and get covered pharmaceuticals if they need them. But, I think we're over an hour, so let's just finish up here with Zero Hedge. German police raid AfD lawmaker's home over years-old social media posts. Protesters and prosecutors in Munich carried out searches on Friday morning of private residence of Bavarian State Parliament office of AFD lawmaker Rene Durkis, reportedly in connection with alleged insults and social media posts dating back several years. Again, combing through your social media and arresting you for it, ridiculous. That's not free speech. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the live stream. Thanks again for joining me. Really tired today. Had a fun weekend. Did some great things. But really exhausted today, and it's terribly rainy, and I get seasonal affect disorder. So a few cloudy days in a row, especially during the winter, and I start feeling like I need to hibernate. All right, don't forget you're under attack psychologically, biologically. Stay hip to the trick. I'm here every day, Monday through Friday, live stream at 10 a.m. I appreciate you. Respect. See you tomorrow.
Conspiracy. You know that is a conspiracy.
The New World Order.
You're crazy. You're crazy, man. You're crazy. I like you. But you're crazy. That's not fire.